from the News Channel 5 Network. This is Que-pasa-Nashville.
Bienvenidos and welcome to Que-pasa-Nashville. My name is Christina Allen and thank you for joining me. Today I have two new friends that just kind of almost been arrived in Nashville for the last, I could say, less than a year. We have David Plazas, who's the opinion engagement editor of the Tennessean, and Jaime Cárdenas, if I said that correctly with my little Spanish, the digital strategist of the Tennessean. Thank you both for being on the show.
Happy to be here, Christina. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, we have two Latinos at the Tennessean. I mean, that's a first. I mean, we've had some diversity there, but both of you are fairly new. David, how long have you been here, and exactly where are you from, and exactly what do you do as the opinion engagement editor?
Sure, I've been here for almost 2 years.
Okay.
And I'm originally from Chicago, but spent most of my adult life in Florida, Southwest Florida. I used to be a Spanish language editor and an opinion editor. And so what I do today as the opinion engagement editor is I write editorials and columns. I take in the letters to the editor and other opinions, and then I also go out to the community to hold forums on issues of policy like transit, affordable housing, and education.
Great. And Jaime?
I'm originally from Tijuana, Mexico, and I grew up mostly in Southern California, went to school and college in San Diego University in Orange County, and then started working professionally at the LA Times and a professional soccer team in LA, the LA Galaxy.
Whoa.
I've been here for 4 months in Tennessee, and really enjoying my time here. Part of that diversity you see at the Tennessean includes ourselves, our education reporter is also Latino, and obviously our main vice president of news is also Latino Mexicano.
And that's refreshing. And I'm sure it might not have been intentional. Your credentials are probably what brought you here, but it's also nice to see that as our demographic shift is happening in the Southeast, especially in Nashville, is the third fastest growing percentage-wise in Latinos. It's welcomed and praised that we have that.
So we're part of the USA Today network, which makes up about 107 publications, and the company has always been committed to diversity, and we know we have a long way to go before we match the actual percentages with the nation, but there's an effort to get highly qualified professionals, but also professionals who represent a breadth of diversity.
So I'm from New Mexico, and most of my viewers know that, but and I was a mass media communication major at New Mexico State, which is an historical Hispanic college, and all my friends who are Latinos are news reporters, writers, and so forth. And, you know, and it's funny because all over it's very normal to see them in the Southwest, but to come to the Southeast, you guys do stand out because in maybe USA Today it's very normal with your conferences, but you have to admit, and I would love to get some opinions on your reactions by coming here and understanding the community and people meeting you at your level, because what we found is that our growing Latino community, a lot of them are assimilated and educated in good jobs, but we still do have a large majority of our undocumented community. So do you find a welcoming response from everybody? I'm gonna have to say yes.
Well, you know, I think Nashville, they call it acogedor, which is welcoming,
Yes.
and that's something that's really true, that it's not just because of me and my experience, but there's this thing about Nashville, which is welcoming and open, and that's made the transition here very, very easy.
But coming from San Diego and/or South, you know, in Florida, it's a big difference.
Yeah, it's not at every corner where you are going to hear Spanish spoken, but that almost makes it even more rare and more welcoming when you do happen to catch a conversation in the Kroger's or wherever, and like, hablas español, and that just strikes a bond, an instant bond that's wouldn't normally be there at other cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, or Miami, because it's so common.
And you're exactly right, because when you do find someone or someone finds you, they're excited to speak or share where they're from, their food, their culture, which is what this show's about, and as well as some of your recent articles. It was a beautiful sight to open up the Sunday paper to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, to be on the front cover about our Latino growth. First of all, can you kind of define what Hispanic Heritage Month is?
Sure. Hispanic Heritage Month started off in the 60s under the Johnson administration to celebrate the friendship that the United States had with Mexico and several Central American countries that expanded because of Independence Days, that expanded under the Reagan administration to become a whole month. And even though it encompasses, I think, anywhere from 7 or 8 different
Countries,
it really is a celebration of all of Latin America and people who are Latinos, whether by birth in another country or of heritage of Latinos, to celebrate those achievements and the friendship that we have with the United States.
And I compared a lot to Black History Month. You know, it's not just our, pop cultural actors and singers, but it's our journalists like yourselves, or our poets and so forth. There's just a lot. The food, the culture, the music, all of that encompasses. As Nashville is becoming more and more, we've seen a lot of celebrations recently for Hispanic Heritage Month, which you find a lot more non-Hispanics attending, and that's also a breath of fresh air. But as we look at the article you wrote, first of all, was that easy to propose, or was it an automatic because of this shift in your internal structure with your new editor coming in as well as being Latino?
It was definitely easier there because of Michael Anastasi, our boss, and the new editor of the Tennessean since December. He instantly got it. When we presented the story, the numbers, the demographics are changing, and the people within the city that are already part of the city's fabric and culture that have already contributed so much, it became very easy to pitch that story and grew to the level that it did.
Yeah, the challenge as well is that it wasn't just about Hispanic Heritage Month. This started off this coverage that we're going to do over a long period of time. An interesting Pew Hispanic study came out that showed a decrease in the increases of Hispanic growth across the country, except the South. The South, the Hispanic community is growing exponentially, 5% a year in Nashville, and we'll be 34% of the national population by 2040.
And go ahead.
And part of the idea for this feature wasn't just to say, hey, before you know it, you're going to turn left and there's going to be a lot of Latinos around you. That wasn't the idea. The idea is that, hey, there's already Latinos here in Nashville, and they've been here for decades, and they've already contributed a lot to the community. And that's some of the stuff that some of the stories we're looking to tell. The stories of those people that have been here for 20, 30 years, and have already been contributing a lot to the community.
And I think you find, as you said, they're my grandchildren. You know, how you identify. Even though I'm married to someone from a native Nashvilleian, I think my mother's abuela, my sister's are tias, and my brother tios, and so they, are considered part of that statistic. And they're more U.S. born than coming in from either undocumented or coming foreign born. They're more U.S. born children, which reflects the needs of economics, teachers, bilingual 911 operators, or so forth. It's just becoming the fabric of who we are. But it's on the front page, and that was being here.
And that was Jaime's byline.
I know, it's beautiful. Thank you, because it was so refreshing and much needed, and I think for everyone else, I think a lot of us who have been here a long time have seen it, have seen the economic impact, the beauty they bring, but some of those still see it as the negative or the resources they take up. So in doing your stories, what did you find about the community? Because you are a breath of fresh air, being new and not having you just a little longer, but not knowing who these people are. What was your take on some of the features you had?
Immediately from the moment I got here, I was able to just identify a lot of great things about the city in terms of the Latino community, a lot of great people that can easily be highlighted. The way that the metro schools, or this one particular school, Glencliff, had started a mariachi program, immediately drew our attention. And then when we come to find out that the director of the band or the mariachi program is a mujer, not something that's very common.
She's a lady, yeah, mujer, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. And it's not very common in Mexico and other places where mariachi is. That's a tough field to break into, but it's a growing field. So it kind of paralleled the story of Latinos rising in the city.
And I think I will acknowledge, because I know Gabriela and the program, it's that there's 140 languages spoken at Glencliff High School. But not everyone in the mariachi band is Latino.
No.
We have a Kurdish violinist. I mean, it's the beauty of a multicultural mariachi band, which is great players, but loving the music and the sound and so forth. In some of your stories, and since you've been here 2 years, what have you found?
Sure. So one of the things that I did from the opinion side was invite people from the community to share their stories. And so it allowed the audience, a lot of non-Latinos, to see that the range of cultures and skin colors, and the fact that we're café con leche. We are essentially
Coffee
go from,
with cream, you gotta
from white to dark. And we also have many stories. There were Cubans, Argentines, Costa Ricans, etc., and who make up the fabric of Nashville. And while I believe about 80% are Mexican, which is very important to recognize with the mariachi program and others, there is also a breadth of diversity within the Latino community.
And that is hard because my first question, do I say Latino or Hispanic? And I'm like, well, I grew up utilizing both. If they're interchangeable, depends on who you ask. But I encourage people to feel comfortable with what they say. And I sometimes refer it, is it black or African American? It's, if you're Somali, or some other countries, you have to remember that. But I think some basic 101 is still needed. However, you kind of realize that within the stories you took, that we're all different.
I think Jaime had alluded to our education reporter, Jason Gonzalez. He wrote a column, Hispanic or Latino, precisely to look at that topic. And in some parts of the country, there's a preference. Generally on the West Coast, Latino is preferred. Generally on the East Coast, where I used to work in Florida, Hispanic is preferred. But I think many parts in the Midwest, perhaps, there's, like you, I grew up interchanging these things.
Yes, and I think, it's funny because when I moved here in 1988, I never used the word Hispanic or Latino. You were from Colombia, Mexico, Costa Rica, and you weren't given those names until you're in a population where there's not many Spanish speaking. And we talk about the word Hispanic being founded when the U.S. Census tract in the 80s tried to put all Spanish speaking people together, and it was a little new checkbox. But it's still the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. The first one is in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the very first one, and that's what they chose to use. So, but we're going to take a quick break, come back. We're going to come back and talk to David Plazas and Jaime Cárdenas. I always want to roll my R's as we continue our conversation in Que-pasa-Nashville.